Hello and welcome to Ani Short Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. I'm going to try and upload a new story each day. The Phantom Bell. The Isle of Wight was known for its rolling hills, misty cliffs, and the sea's eternal whispers. But few talked about St. Wendell's Church, an ancient, weathered building standing desolate on the outskirts of Ventnor. Fewer still spoke of the bell that hung in its belfry, a bell that no human hand had touched for over a century, yet it continued to ring. Holly Arnold had heard the rumors about the Phantom Bell her whole life, though she never believed them. Her skepticism changed when she inherited her aunt's dusty, forgotten cottage just 2 miles from St. Wendell's. One chilly autumn evening, after settling in, she heard the faint, echoing chime of the bell drifting across the moors. It was an impossible sound. The bell was cracked, its pull rope severed decades ago. But there it was, clear and resonant, as though calling her. Holly brushed it off, deciding it was just the wind, the trick of the island's eerie atmosphere. But night after night it tolled, growing louder, closer, until it felt as if the sound was inside her very bones. Curiosity got the best of her, and one moonless evening she followed the sound. Mist clung to the ground like ghostly fingers as she made her way to the old church, the wind biting through her coat. When she finally reached St. Wendell's, she stopped at the threshold, staring up at the belfry. The bell swayed slightly in the windless night, and Holly felt a deep chill as it struck once, just once, echoing through the still air. "Who's there?" she called, her voice barely audible. The shadows inside the church seemed to shift in answer, and something ancient seemed to whisper her name from within the darkness. Shaking, she crossed the threshold and stepped inside. St. Wendell's was cold and hollow, its pews draped in cobwebs, the scent of mold thick in the air. At the altar, a dusty, rotting Bible lay open, its pages frozen in time. Holly approached it, feeling the silent weight of hundreds of unspoken prayers hanging heavy in the air. Suddenly, the bell tolled again, reverberating through the stone walls. Holly felt a presence stirring, something cold, damp, and unmistakably otherworldly. Shadows began to coalesce at the edges of her vision, forming shapes that flickered in and out like candle flames. She turned slowly, and her breath caught as she saw them. They were people, ghostly figures clad in old-fashioned clothing, their faces pale and eyes hollow. They moved silently, gliding through the aisles as though in search of something lost. Each one seemed unaware of the others, trapped in their own summer procession. A woman in a tattered wedding gown floated past, her veil trailing like mist. Her eyes locked with Holly's, and a bone-chilling sorrow radiated from her. Holly realized with horror that these were souls bound to St. Wendell's, called back by the Phantom Bell. And now, it seemed, they knew she could see them. The bell tolled again, louder this time, and a man appeared at the front of the congregation, his skeletal frame dressed in the robes of a priest. His eyes were empty sockets, yet Holly could feel him staring at her. His mouth opened, and a voice, deep and echoing, filled the church, though his lips never moved. "You have come to bear witness, Holly Arnold," the voice intoned, sending an icy shiver down her spine. Who are you?" Holly stammered, stepping back. "I am the keeper of this place, and these are the souls who once prayed within these walls. Each night the bell summons them to repent, yet none find peace." The congregation of spirits turned to face her, their ghostly eyes filled with a silent plea. "Why me?" she whispered, barely able to speak. "The bell has chosen you," the priest's voice resonated. "To free us from our eternal penance." Holly felt a force called, an unyielding press against her chest. She could hardly breathe, her heart pounding like a war drum. The spirits drew closer, their pale faces twisted with sorrow and regret, their hands reaching out to her as though she were their last hope. What must I do?" Holly asked, her voice barely a whisper. The priest raised a skeletal hand, and a cold wind rushed through the church, stirring the forgotten Bible open to a specific page. Holly glanced down and saw a passage about forgiveness and atonement, the ink faded but legible. "Read it," the priest commanded, his hollow gaze unyielding. Her hand shook as she picked up the Bible. Her voice wavered as she began to recite the ancient words, feeling each syllable resonate through her very soul. The spirits pressed in, their eyes fixed on her with desperate intensity. As she read, the bell tolled once more, each strike seeming to dissolve a spirit into mist. One by one, they faded, their faces relaxing, their sorrow lifting. The woman in the wedding dress was the last to go, her face finally at peace as she vanished into the ether. When the last spirit disappeared, Holly let the Bible fall from her hands, exhausted and trembling. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by her own rugged breathing. She turned to leave, but the priest's voice stopped her. "Your penance is yet incomplete," he whispered, his skeletal hand reaching out to her. "No," she cried, but it was too late. The world spun, and everything went black. Holly's body was never found. In the weeks that followed, the people of Ventnor noticed a strange new sound at night, a woman's voice, calling faintly, sorrowfully, from the church. And each night, as the phantom bell tolled, a new figure joined the spectral congregation inside St. Wendell's, their face familiar to anyone who knew Holly Arnold. But her eyes, like those of all the others, remained hollow, eternally bound to the church. Holly's disappearance sent ripples through the small, close-knit community. Friends, neighbors, and distant relatives gathered by the church, lighting candles, whispering prayers, and wondering how a simple inheritance could have led to her vanishing. But even those who gathered there at night never dared cross the threshold of St. Wendell's, for the bell now tolled with a resonance that cut through bone and marrow, a warning and a call. But on the anniversary of Holly's disappearance, a young historian named Thomas Macready, who had studied the ghost legends of the Isle of Wight for years, decided it was time to uncover the truth about St. Wendell's and its haunted bell. Armed with little more than a flashlight, a thick coat, and a journal of old Isle lore, he made his way to the abandoned church on a night thick with mist. As he approached the dark silhouette of the church, Thomas felt a chill spread through him. The bell began to toll, slow and deliberate, its eerie echo seeming to come from the very ground beneath his feet. He hesitated at the door, heart pounding, before finally stepping inside. The air inside St. Wendell's was heavy, dense with the scent of decay and centuries-old mildew. He moved slowly, raising his flashlight to inspect the crumbling stone walls and faded tapestries. And then he saw them, ghostly figures in the pews, their pale faces tilted toward the altar, frozen in an expression of sorrow and quiet dread. And at the very front of the congregation, he recognized her from old photographs, Holly Arnold. Her spirit stood at the head of the assembly, her eyes vacant, her face ashen and hollow. She was dressed as she had been in life, but her expression was one of deep longing, as if she were caught forever in a silent scream. Who are you?" he whispered. The priest's skeletal figure appeared once more beside Holly, his empty eyes boring into Thomas. "Another soul seeks the truth," the priest intoned, his voice a chilling wind that echoed through the nave. "Will you bear witness? Will you risk your fate to save hers?" Thomas swallowed, staring at Holly's ghostly form. Despite her hollow gaze, he sensed a flicker of recognition, a desperate plea buried deep within her. Something within him hardened, a determination taking root. He nodded. "Yes, tell me how I can free her." The priest pointed to the Bible, still lying on the altar. "You must read the final rites. It was Holly's choice that condemned her soul. If she wishes to be free, another must take her place and willingly choose the penance." Thomas felt a wave of dread wash over him, but he steeled himself. He glanced back at Holly, who seemed to mouth the words, "Please." With trembling hands, Thomas picked up the Bible and began to read the passage, his voice growing louder with each line. The church filled with a strange energy as he spoke the ancient words, and the congregation of ghosts rose from their seats, gathering around him. The air grew colder, denser, and each word seemed to drain his strength. When he reached the final line, a low, hollow laugh filled the church. The priest's bony fingers reached out to him. "And now the one who seeks the truth shall remain," he intoned. "There." Holly's voice echoed through the church, piercing the silence. For a brief moment she appeared as she had in life, her face full of fear and regret. She lunged forward, reaching for Thomas, her spirit somehow solidifying as she strained to pull him back from the priest's icy grasp. But it was too late. Thomas felt himself slipping, his vision blurring as the church around him faded into a cold, timeless fog. In his final moments, he could see Holly, free and whole, standing at the door, her face tear-streaked as she looked back at him one last time. "Thank you," she whispered. The next morning, the townspeople found the doors to St. Wendell's wide open. Holly's friends and family were overjoyed to see her, alive and somehow unharmed, though her eyes held a haunted look that no one could quite understand. She remembered nothing of the church, only that she felt an intense sorrow every time she heard the phantom bell ring. Years passed, and Holly tried to forget what had happened. But St. Wendell's never lost its grip on her. Sometimes, in the dead of night, she'd hear the faint tolling of the bell calling to her, and with it a whisper that sounded chillingly like Thomas's voice. And every so often townsfolk would report seeing a new figure in the church at night, a young man with sorrowful eyes, bound to St. Wendell's by a promise he would keep forever. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please don't forget to like, and even better, like and subscribe. Thank you very much, and I hope you have had or have a great day.